Paige Omartian, and you're watching Coffee with Paige. So grab your coffee or tea or whatever it is you drink and settle in, because I want to introduce you to our awesome guest for today, Stephanie Logan. Hey, Stephanie. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out with me. Well, Stephanie and I know each other through our church, and I've actually been in her small group for a while, and she's awesome and has been very much of an encouragement in my life. And it was interesting because when we were, in small group together and she's leading the group and whatnot, and she mentioned a few times that she had been through some things in her life, and she said, girl, you can't imagine, who I was then and who I am now. And I was like, you're right, because you're such a godly, amazing woman. And it's just, you kind of hinted that there was a story there. So I wanted to invite Stephanie on Coffee with Paige, because I think all of us are going to be really blessed by her story and what God has done in your life. So I just, let's start from the beginning. Let's start from, Stephanie growing up, and just what was your life like growing up with your parents and, all of that.
I think that the beginning actually started out well. I honestly had a pretty normal childhood, did the normal little kid things, was in my own little kid world. So was nothing really major that happened. I grew up with both my parents. They've been married 30 plus years, so wow. That's a blessing.
Yeah.
But honestly, they're Christians, so I was raised in church my whole life. But that was really, to be quite honest, that was something that wasn't really my choice. They just took me there.
Gotcha.
So honestly, I was there and I heard the word, and I'm probably sure I got saved maybe 20 times. You know how that goes. But honestly, there was nothing really major. I think I was pretty happy as a child, and had a good relationship with my parents, especially my mother. My relationship with my dad was fine then. Like I said, I don't think that it was anything strained at that point, because like I said, I was in my own world. I was a child and I was just not thinking.
Yeah.
But when I got closer to being a teenager, that's when some things shifted for me with my dad. My dad, honestly, is a good man, still is a good man. And growing up, he was a provider. We never wanted for anything. He always, we had everything we wanted or needed. He treated my mother well, all those things. And I'm not even going to say that he didn't treat me and my brother well, because he did. But the thing that was lacking for me, I could not understand as a young girl, especially adolescent age, when you really need that. I could not see why he was not affectionate with me. I would watch him with my mother, and he would be that way with her, but when it came to me, I was like, okay, why is he not doing it? So it, for a while I was like, I don't know, but eventually it started to weigh on me, and I ultimately know, like I said, it's not anything that he purposely did. I know that, but it's something that I know that the enemy planted in my head as a young child, and just I ran with it. Wow. So when you're already at a point when you're preteen and you're already dealing with trying to be accepted at school and trying to figure out who you are and all that, and you come home and you feel that same, I don't know if my dad even really likes me. That is a hard place to be.
Yeah.
It's a very hard place to be.
Yeah. Well, so what did that start to do, in that kind of shift or that realization? Maybe you didn't even realize it fully at that point, but you still felt a void. So what did that start to do to you as a teenager?
I think my way of finding acceptance, whether it be with my dad or other people, was I'm just going to be good at everything, and then they can't say anything. They're going to have to respect me because I do this and this and this. And so I was I was a really good student, really, really good student. I played all these sports. I was in all these clubs, busy, typical overachiever type stuff.
Gotcha.
And for me, that made me feel good about myself. Being good at things and having people, recognize that, and having these achievements. So that worked for a while. It was working for me. It was working for me. And I think that's how I coped. And ultimately, like I said, with my dad, I think there's a part of me that wanted him to recognize that too. And I know that he did. I know that he's proud of me. He's told me that. But I think somehow I thought, okay, well, this is going to fix everything. But at the end of the day, it's still a void there. Still something there that wasn't quite. I don't care how much I did. I could do this. It doesn't matter. It was still something there that wasn't right.
Well, so then tell me about when you went off to college. What was that? Were you excited to go? Where were you at then? And what was that experience like?
Absolutely. I was so excited because, like I said, I was so ready to leave. I was so ready to leave. Like, I'm still feeling this stuff about my dad, and I'm tired of living with my parents' rules, like a typical person going to college.
Yeah.
But for me, I thought, oh, this is going to be good. I'm going to have freedom. I ain't going to have to listen to them. I'm not going to have to. So, honestly, I remember, like, when they dropped me off, I still remember the day they dropped me off at college. I don't think there was a sad part in my body. I remember them walking out and me being like, okay, what am I going to get into first? And and I did. I jumped headfirst into whatever I wanted to. One of the things that happened, like I said, I was in church my whole life, and I had been taught the right things. And I can say that because I heard it so much, I think that I had good intentions to do these things, and I wanted to live this righteous life, and I wanted to do good. But I tell you, if you don't have the right foundation for yourself, there's only so far that good intentions will take you. And so I think that going there, I was like, well, I'm a good girl. I'm going to stay like this. But when you've got so much around you and your influences are so much different than what you'd come from, it's almost impossible. If you don't have that foundation with Christ early on, you're not going to make it. So I went to college. I was a virgin. And it was interesting because a lot of my friends were, and I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this. But I was like, I need to just wait. That's what I should do. That's the right thing to do. So I had good intentions, but I'll tell you, within the first month of being there, that was over.
Wow.
That was over. And, what was really more difficult about that situation, it was traumatic because it actually ended up being a rape situation. And you see that on, like, Lifetime movies and stuff, like, this person has a perfect life and everything is good, and then they go to college and that happens. And you don't think that would really happen, but that happened. That happened to me, and honestly, I never thought that would happen. So going to look for something that I thought would affirm me with a guy or all these other guys around me ended up being
devastating.
Tragic. So, yeah.
Well, and that experience, changes a person so much because it's so horrific. What did you feel after that? Like, where were you at emotionally? How did you cope with that?
Honestly, at first, I was more upset with myself. Really angry and really disappointed in myself. Not so much the other person who did this to me, but myself. And I was like, how could you do this? You waited all these years, and how did you put yourself there, and why, so I was beating myself up. And I even remember after it happened, I was very upset. I was crying and pretty much running from this guy's dorm to my dorm. And I remember the enemy being like, well, there's nothing left now. You might as well just go on out there and do whatever. And I kind of believed it. Because I felt like you're worthless now. I mean, you've pretty much just given everything up. So that was really hard. That was a really hard moment for me. And it was more difficult because I didn't talk about it. Because initially I thought it was my fault, so I didn't say anything. But like true Stephanie form, like all these years before, I was like, you know what? Put your shell on, put your face on, and keep moving. And that's what I did.
I think that is a really interesting thing that you said, that you felt guilty. And I think a lot of women who go through this, the shame that they feel is just unbelievable. And that feeling of, worthless, like you're stripped of your dignity and you may as well go out and just do whatever because you're not worth anything now. Like that, I think a lot of people can relate to, and the guilt too. Just that Satan just really loves to feed you lies when you're, dealing with shame like that. And so tell me, from then on, what did it look like for you? What did you do?
Did the usual thing, party, kept doing the same old.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I felt like, well, you've already messed up, so just keep going. But I came to a point where I was like, wow, who are you? Like, this is horrible. And I became really depressed. And I was like, this isn't good. So later on in my college years, I knew this is wasn't what I was supposed to do. So I started going to church, actually. Went to church. But I was so broken at that point that the people that I reached out to ended up being like a very hurtful situation, even with people in the church. So that I go backwards, and I'm like, you know what? By the time I leave college and have went through so much with different situations and different people and all those things, I was so done, like with church, with God, with people, with everything. So when I graduated and moved to Nashville, I was at a point where I was like, you know what? I live for Stephanie. I don't care about people. I'm just out here for myself. I'm going to do what makes me feel good. Because at that point, I felt entitled. And that's a dangerous place to be. So that was what my life was for at least good year and a half. It was like, whatever makes you feel good, do it. Whether it was partying, whether it was this guy taking me out, or I bet you I can get him to take me out. I bet you I can get him to do this for me or that. All of those things were very, very empty. So I lived that. I lived that life for, like I said, a good year and a half. I didn't really have any friends when I came here, but I was so broken that I was like, I don't need friends. I can just go out, and this is my goal tonight. I'm going out. I'm going to find a guy. He's going to pay all this stuff. He's going to pay my drinks. He's going to take me out. All this. I'm good. I didn't need friends is what I thought. So it started to get really old. And I was like young. I'm like 23 or 24 at this point. And I'm like, the realization starts to hit me like, well, this is your life now. This is what you grew up, went to school, and did all that. And this is your life. And this is how it looks. And it just didn't look good. And I honestly, I had to be really honest with myself, I was very miserable. And I remember there were some nights I would be in my apartment and I would just scream like, God, you have got to help me. Like, just be bawling, crying. And I don't even know if I fully expected him to help me, which is crazy. You can say these things and sometimes you don't even really believe him, but he was hearing me.
Well, and you said when we talked before that there was a point when it was like almost like your lowest of low point where you feel like God in the midst of that moment almost like just spoke to you and pulled you out of it, right?
Yes. It was pretty amazing, actually. I called up this guy that I was talking to at the time and basically went to his house. And I didn't go there for anything but to get what I wanted. And it wasn't it wasn't a wholesome thing, if I can say it like that. So I remember just being like, I didn't come here to talk and all that. And when you present yourself like that to a guy, of course, they're not going to respect you. So we're in the midst of all the stuff that we're doing. And honestly, while everything is going on, I remember just feeling like this is disgusting. Like, I feel disgusting. I feel like a piece of like meat or something. Like, because of the way he was treating me, because of the way things were happening. And I mean, it was crazy because I was drunk too. But I was still like, this isn't right. So I remember when everything was over and I was leaving his house, I just remember like backing out of his driveway, and I was sitting here looking at him. He's standing on his porch. And I was like, God, I'm just thinking to myself, now I'm still drunk, but I'm still thinking all this. I'm like, this is awful. And I remember at that point, God, I promise you, I will never forget this. God saying to me, he's like, you know what, Stephanie, he's like, you're worth more than this. You're worth more. And in the state that I was in, I was like, you know what, God, I am. And I'm done. Like, I am done. Like, and and that was it. That was like the light bulb moment for me. Just hearing that and I think it's really awesome because in the midst of the nastiness and the dirtiness and just the mess, he doesn't care if he just watched me do these things. He doesn't care that I've spent years running from him or, you know, being pretty much straight up, sometimes turning my back on him. He didn't care in that moment to come and be like, no, this is not you.
Yeah.
So
he still showed up and said, you're worth more than that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. Like, in the midst of that moment, how God is right there, like, Stephanie, calling you out of it, raising you up into your true calling, into who you really are. Okay, so from that moment on, I remember you said that you ended up going to our church, and that's where you got connected with people to help you walk out.
Right.
Just fully surrendering to the Lord for real, you know. So what was that like?
It was interesting. It was different at first. Because Bethel is, like, as you know, it's a wonderful place and it is a multicultural place. So for one thing, I wasn't used to that. And I was like, these people have to be fake. Are they serious? They probably just do this on Sunday. But it's not. Those are some of the most genuine people I've had. Some of the most impactful and significant relationships from there. So learning, and you know, I was at a point where I didn't walk with people before because I didn't think I could trust them, but I think that God really used the connection at that church to help me heal in a lot of areas. So it was good, you know. So I've had several people who, you know, have been there throughout the years to speak into my life, and it's been a blessing. It really has.
Well, and what is the healing process looked like in your life, you know, with the things that you've been through, and as you've fully surrendered them to the Lord, saying, this is messy, Lord, but here, what has the healing process looked like?
It's looked like a continual journey that I'm still on. It is looked like God's grace every day because, I mean, I'm still, if not for him, I would still be a mess because I don't care how much good God does, the enemy is still there. So the enemy, of course, is still trying to say things, but you know, God is so gracious. He is so gracious, and he's kept me, and that's the thing I can say, like, all the time. As long as I'm seeking him, he's there and he's available and speaking through his word, just continuously and showing me favor and showing up when I need him. So honestly, it's been all him. And even when I felt like, you know, I'm tired, I want to give up, he never lets me do that. Never. He knows how to step in just like he did that first time and tell me the right words or send the right person or send the right situation to bring me back. So honestly, he has had his hand on me, and I can't, there's no way that I can like turn from that at this point.
Well, and what kinds of things has he been putting on your heart? What are you passionate about with the thing, as he's been speaking to you, renewing you, giving you new dreams, and just, you know, making a new Stephanie? You know what I mean? Like, what are you passionate about that you feel the Lord's really put in you?
I'm really passionate about other people, especially encouraging them. Because
you're good at that.
Thank you. I think I realized a lot of the stuff that I went through was really unnecessary. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I was a victim because I made a lot of my own choices, but it was so unnecessary. So for the younger women, I'm just like, especially like the teenagers and going into college age, I'm just like, no, you can do it right the first time. You don't have to go through all this.
Yeah.
But for people who are my peers or closer to my age, I'm like, I just really love to see people at their best. And if God can use me to give them a word or use me in any kind of way, I'm just always open to it. It's always rewarding for me to see God move and just help people to progress to what they're supposed to be.
Well, in light of that, as we close, could you just share, whatever encouragement is burning on your heart for the people who are watching?
I would just say, if you don't know God for yourself, He's there to get to know. The word says, if you draw near to me, I'll draw near to you. And that's very true. That's what I found to be true. There's another scripture in Psalms 34:8 that says, taste and see that the Lord is good. And that's what I would challenge people to do. I was always the type of person that was like, well, I don't know. You're going to have to show me. You're going to have to prove it to me. But I'm going to tell you, if you try God, He's going to show up.
It's true.
So
it's true.
that is my challenge to people. It don't just settle for, well, I've heard about God, or, well, this is what, even if you were like me and you grew up in church and it's just a tradition. No, really, He died to give you a relationship with Him. So take Him up on that and see what He does with your life. So for me, I'm still in the process. I'm still, I'm still growing, but I know that He's real and He's real and He's good. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with me and with so many people who I know are going to be so encouraged by the things that you've been through, and yet how God has taken your life and taken these things and redeemed, the hard things and really brought about so much beauty and purpose through your life. I'm just blessed to know you. So thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next Tuesday on the next Coffee with Paige.